Hey guys, it's Drac, and this is the modification guide for the Nerf MEGA Magnus. And you can see that I've already started to unscrew and butterfly it open here. I've loosened all the screws everywhere, and I wanted to show start to finish how I'm taking the blaster apart, not only because it's helpful for me as I'm putting it back together, but because it's helpful for you to see how it comes apart. So what's important to notice here is that the slide, right, has a notch that seems to lock into its running rail, and you want to gently tease that out because it's important, and I'm kind of trying to figure out how to do that myself. It looks like okay, so I got a little bit lucky there, but there's two clips here and they lock into the running rail, which means it'll snap back into place very easily, but that is more or less how you take the slide off. Now, the back slide honestly doesn't really need to come off. This is going to be a basic modification guide, but I assume that it has the same kind of clip system, and then it's also pressed into the plunger tube, which is how it's priming. It's a 90-degree angle, which isn't good for stress, but it is what it is. I will remove it from there and then kind of tease it out of its grooves. I'll fool with that in just a second. But looks like once you've removed that, there is one. This screw is not covered or anything, so I should be able to get the remaining half of the blaster apart. I always just kind of pry it open gently as I'm going through, and flathead screwdrivers can be great for this, but okay, it looks like there's another clip here in the back, and I'm going to go grab a flathead and try and pry this open, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so there are two wonderful lessons here. The first is that this was not a clip. There was just a hidden screw underneath the slide, and as soon as I unscrewed that, it started to pop up and open, so that was pretty easy, and now you can see the internals of the blaster. The second really great lesson here is take your darts out of your blaster before you open it up to modify it. That's just super simple. It means that there's less stress on the frame and everything, but I had darts inside my blaster, and now I think there's one primed in there, and you're going to have a much easier time if you just take those out in their entirety. Anyway, this is how the built-in clip looks inside the blaster, and then these up here are the kind of friction, I'm trying to think of the right word for them. They're like friction lips almost that hold the darts in while they're being put into the built-in clip. This is the series of locks that make sure that the blaster has been primed forward before you can fire it, which is good. And I've had viewers tell me, and then I looked into, there have been mods where people have taken the Centurion clip and built it into here so that it sticks out and you hold 6 darts in the Magnus. I think that that's a neat mod. It's certainly like a really intuitive thing. It's something that I'd think of like, oh, this is really great, but like I used to make mini clips for my blasters because I really liked this sleek, compact look, and in addition to being an advanced mod, I don't think that it's a necessary mod. I think it's kind of silly to take something that's already like so efficient and so compact and so easy to holster and then give it an extra thing. Like if I wanted to make this into a, I'm trying to think of what they're called, the Retaliator, the Elite Retaliator that has the clip system like this, then I'd just buy a Retaliator. I wouldn't fool with taking a mega gun and turning it into something that's designed to fire streamline style darts and has a larger clip or whatever. It looks like the plunger system is highly compact, which is good. It means that they minimize the blaster as much as they could beforehand, and there's no need for me to try to minimize it as I'm going through. But what I plan on doing is improving the seal, adding a spring. I'll let you know what spring I choose, possibly improving the catch, I'm not sure, and then just generally knocking out the air restrictor and doing simple modifications to just get the most out of this Mega Magnus. So without any further ado, I'm going to start trying to take these parts out. Now, this is a somewhat symmetrical piece, so if you let yours kind of fly off at the handle or however you go about it, or if you choose to paint it, it's important to remember that this is how it went into the blaster. There are 2 notches facing you, and the 2 notches facing the blaster are at the very front, because this would be a very easy piece to reverse, and then you'd be sitting there wondering for 30 minutes why your blaster isn't going back together the way you took it apart. Now, one thing that I've noticed as an issue while I've been playing with the Magnus is that it seems to have trouble firing the first dart. The second and third shots are always pretty excellent, but the first shot has a little bit to be desired, and I think that that's because of the way that it breaches. It doesn't have like a running rail here like the old in-strike blasters used to have, but that's one reason that the dart tooth system built into this blaster is so important, and it looks really efficient. It's got a return spring and a secondary dart tooth, and I think that it's fine. I don't think that we need to touch this at all, but we do need to remove it so that we can get at our assembly here, and it's just flying out. So you can see that we have just a large plunger tube with an air restrictor, and the seal is, I'm trying to figure out if this is direct. It is direct. It just doesn't have like a plunger rod. It just has this, which is its plunger, and then the spring itself is acting as the rod. And this is a pretty serious spring, in all honesty. I'm not sure what I'm going to add to this to make it tougher, but we will see. So without any further ado, I'm going to try and break this down and open, and I'm going to get in here and knock out this AR, which is quite large. Okay guys, so Hasbro has made it much more difficult to remove air restrictors than it used to be. The Mega dart posts are so large that my normal strategy of twisting out the dart peg has gotten much more complicated, because it's almost impossible with reasonably sized needle nose pliers to reach in, and there, I've done this 3 times now. I get a small piece out, and then I'm left with another post to work with. So I thought I'll come in from reverse, remove the plunger assembly entirely, and blow out the dart post like I used to. And that's not possible, because the same way that they used to start welding Night Finder plunger tubes together, they've welded this back piece on, which prevents this plunger here, which you can barely see as the shadow of its black O-ring, from leaving the barrel in reverse. And then this is the front plunger here, which also seems to have a black O-ring on it up at the top, and the air restrictor is built in right around here. Now, the issue that I'm having is that it's tricky to get the air restrictor out without using a Dremel, because you can't drill into it for fear of destroying your plunger rod. So what I've been doing is I've been using the bracket here, which is the strongest piece of plastic, to remove it about ½ an inch from its plunger rod. I took a long flathead screwdriver, which works really well as like a simple machine and a wedge, to kind of chisel out each one of these posts. Now I've already done one, but I decided to make this video clip kind of showing how I'm doing it, so that you don't break your blaster if you choose to do this. Now the obvious answer is just pick up your Dremel and drill it out, but not everybody has a Dremel. So what I've done is I've lined it up with one of the 3 posts inside. I'm holding it, bracing this against here so that it's removed from the plunger rod, and I'm holding it like this, which not only keeps it straight, but it's, the most important thing here is feeling it, so that I can feel when the plastic breaks and I don't go any further. So instead of like one really hard tap, I'm going to do a series of light taps and just kind of break through it slowly and gently, so that I know, because as soon as it breaks through, it's going to sink a little, and I can grip it down here and stop it from breaking anything that I don't want to be removed. So it's just like that, and it's so subtle, but you can see now that I've pierced this, and when I move it, I have one less piece down here, and it should be much easier to get this out now. So I'm going to reach in one more time, and now that's gone. You can see where I pierced each one of these, and I have a more or less straight shot through to my barrel. The The air restrictor isn't quite removed though yet. I still need to go in with either this in a twisting motion or my Dremel, and it looks like I might have to use my Dremel to clean it up just a little bit. But I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. Hey guys, so I wanted to show that, like, as you're going through this process, you slowly get more and more of these little orange pieces out. It may be that for just a cleaner overall brake, you have to boil and pop this so that you can slide the entire assembly out. The only issue with that being that I feel you'd also have to do a brake here because this piece is not designed to go through the blaster, so you'd have to do a lot of braking and epoxying just to get to where I'm at right now. But you can see, looking through the air restrictor, I'm slowly, when I first started modding, this was kind of an inefficient technique that I'd use with a hammer and a long flathead screwdriver. These days I normally use a Dremel, but I'm kind of determined to do it this old school way just so that I can prove that it's like possible to do it this way and that you don't necessarily need a Dremel for this mod. But I'm slowly rotating through and cracking the air restrictor from the front, and I intend to pull it out with needle nose pliers after I've gotten it cracked. Now I know this is a lot of different segments on how to remove an air restrictor with a hammer, which seems like a simple concept, but it's so easy to break your blaster while you're doing it that I want to provide you guys with the maximum amount of information and kind of step-by-step freeze frames and photos and video segments for how many different ways there are to twist and pull this out. But you're essentially just gently trying to pulverize the air restrictor inside here without damaging this, so that you can knock it out the front and then pull it out with your needle nose pliers. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. It looks like I went and found a Night Finder spring, and from the looks of things over here, this is a really tough catch, so I don't think that I'll need to fool with this white acrylic at all to replace the catch. I think that I'm going to do a Night Finder Spring Edition. I'm going to finish knocking out this air restrictor, and then I'm going to try to improve the seal with maybe some lithium grease at this point, because it looks like there's a solid rubber plunger in here. There's no O-ring, it's just a solid rubber push plunger. And it's super air efficient, and I think that it'll be really great as soon as I get this out. Okay guys, so as promised, this is what an air restrictor from a Mega Dart blaster looks like once you've completely obliterated it to the degree that you can kind of knock it all out without having to break either this seal or this seal, which leaves you with a much more structurally sound plunger system. But you can see that there is just a straight shot through, which means direct airflow, which is just basic physics. It will be a more efficient blaster. I have here lithium grease that I like to use for blasters, and the best part about it is that it comes in a spray can, so it should be really easy to get down in there. I'm actually going to take a small, they use them as coffee stirrers in the States, I think, but I've always used it to stir my tea, to make sure that this gets all the way into the plunger housing and isn't just stuck up in the barrel. Not that that would be terrible, but lithium grease is really good for like a long-lasting solid seal. But you can see all the pieces of this air restrictor have been knocked out. I've added a Night Finder spring. I'm going to lithium grease the plunger housing, and then I'm going to start piecing everything back together. This looks like a super intuitive blaster to just kind of lay everything back in. It kind of reminds me how each housing is individualized and compartmentalized of the old kind of, I can't remember what they were called, the dart tag blasters that had really sweet internals like that. It is important to note that I discovered that it's impossible to get this half of your slide mechanism off without taking these screws out, and it just is largely unnecessary. So don't fool with that if you're trying to get the other half of the slide off. It's just not worth the trouble, because you can get at everything in the blaster without having to remove it. The only reason I could ever think of that you'd have to is if you were going to paint it, and I actually like this blaster's paint job. It's red and gray-ish. I want to say it's black, but as everybody knows, I am super duper colorblind. The screws for the body housing are different all over, but you don't really need to fiddle with the body housing unless you're painting it, and if you do, just lay them out in such a way. It's pretty intuitive. Small screws go in small dart posts, or small screw posts. You can see them here, like this is a small screw, large screw, large screw, large screw, large screw, large screw, large, 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 small, small. So it's super, it makes a lot of sense, I guess, but be careful that you don't put a large screw into a small screw port or a small one into a large one, because it won't work. And if you put a large into a small and then try and fix it later, you'll have completely stripped your screw port, and that'll be unfortunate. When you're putting the blaster back together, remember to leave this in there because it just looks really crummy if it flies out at any point and you are to lose it. Again, I've tested the catch mechanism with the addition of a night finder spring. If you want to go heavier, you're going to need to pull this off and replace the catch, but I think that this blaster should be really sweet, so I'm going to sandwich it back together and show you what it looks like when it's done. Also, I'm going to throw away all of this. Hey guys, there's only one really tricky part and there it goes, in putting this back together, so I'll show you more or less. Once you have all of your internals seated back inside, make sure that you get your dart sled put back in, and then this hooks around here, and then this entire housing needs to be seated past this, but this likes to pop up and over. That's no good. You need that past your in-strike assembly rig. These two slots on the dart lip holder thing, there's got to be a more technical term for that, but I'm sorry, I don't know what it is. Fit here and here, and then this kind of rests. And then the most important thing that you have to recognize is that there's a notch here and a notch here, and the springs right here built into the shell of the blaster line up with these notches, and you have to make sure that they tease up in there, but they angle downwards as design. So once you get the blaster kind of like situated here, you have to come in with a small screwdriver or something. If you have long nails, I guess you could use those, and tease these into their slots before you screw everything down. Hey guys, so I wanted to do a quick firing demonstration now that the blaster is completely put together and the mods are finished. It turned out really nice. The blaster is much more difficult to prime now, but that's kinda to be expected, not because of adding all of that draw weight, but because of just how little space there was in this blaster to work with. The compression of those two springs, there just is virtually no room for the catch to hang, so you really, I at least, have to like kind of hang right here for a second when I'm priming it, but everything still functions. You no longer have that issue with the first shot, because without the air restrictor to tease the dart out, the air restrictor has a spring in it that pushes the dart forward a little bit sometimes. It just chambers perfectly and fires. So I will fire these 3 shots. I've got a little bit of wind today, but you can see that the performance is much better now, and well, I'm hitting things, but I am very pleased with just the initial velocity of the darts. I think that the accuracy is a little bit improved, which is kind of ridiculous with the wind out right now. I wanted to get this video up much sooner than it's going to end up going up, but my internet service provider is just awful at this location, and it's making it very difficult for me to upload anything. As I've finished this mod, my review video for this blaster is still like in its processing stages of editing on, but I'm just really digging the Magnus. I think that it's a marked improvement over the Centurion in so many ways, and I'm just really pleased with how this mod turned out. So try it yourself, let me know. I think that the Magnus is certainly a blaster worth purchasing, and it's way less expensive than the Centurion. So as always guys, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be serving the community again, and I hope that you liked this mod video. I hope that this was a useful tutorial for you. I know that the blaster's been out for a while, but I just hadn't gotten around to it, and I thought that it was the coolest thing that I had lying around. As always, thanks for watching.